continue our series with Hatch Blue. We are obviously continuing this exploration. We started off, it was a very interesting time to navigate what was happening in US aquaculture. We had conversations with Margaret Henderson, with NOAA. We even talked to the team that produced Artificial, the Patagonia movie that created so much interesting dialogue around aquaculture and the role that hatcheries have played with wild salmon on the east coast of the United States. And so today we continue that journey. I am here. We're joined with Jason Heckathorn from Forever Oceans to talk about Forever Oceans' role in the sustainable aquaculture space and how they're bringing things like technology and greater expectations of beyond what certifications and recommendations look like to really give us a sense of what aquaculture will look like as we move forward into the future. Jason, thank you so much for joining us. I feel like these have been just the most interesting curiosity, conversations. And those curiosity conversations have helped us to unpack really who we need to be as ethical, sustainable aquaculturists in the future. And so it makes sense to me, first and foremost, to ask you, how did you get here? Because we need to frame up, how does someone with a background in technology, defense, and space engineering, how does this all lend itself to the endeavors that you have had in aquaculture?
Great. And thanks for having me on the program, Jennifer. Really excited to share. My story may not be the traditional aquaculture story that I had been working for technology giant Lockheed Martin for a number of years when we were hit by sequestration financial challenges and really needed to broaden the way we were looking at our business. And so as part of that process, we began evaluating adjacent uses of technology. And we were fortunate enough to have a phenomenal scientist who ran our satellite programs that had grown up an Alaskan fisherman. And he had this idea of repurposing satellite command and control robotics to drive big cages of fish around the ocean to effectively address global food security. Mm-hmm. And I think that origin, both in terms of my training and background, but exposure to the industry, probably gave me a little bit of a different perspective. That I came as an outsider and was, very initially interested in just examining the industry practices. And I was also coming with, my own life passions. I love technology. I love conservation. I love international economic development. And so looking at what the industry had been doing and what some of the challenges were, and just openly assessing, anything from pollution to antibiotics to feed conversions, and questioning whether that was the way it had to be, whether that was optimal, whether there was a better way to address food security. And we went through a process for validating our concepts, and that eventually ended up creating what's now Forever Oceans.
So I have to stop you there, because you don't just go from, I saw a fish farm once, to, wow, I think that there's something I may have to say about this. And I love this because I have a culinary background. I stumbled onto aquaculture 10 years ago in the same way. So I just want to slow you down, take a step back and tell me, did you go home and write a framework? Where did that spark come from? Were you eating a fish and seafood dish and thinking about that? Were there readings? What was that moment for you that was the aha moment that would make you pivot your life for this before you formed Forever Oceans?
Yeah. Well, I guess first of all, I have to admit, when I heard the idea, I was in a corporate boardroom and it sounded really crazy to me. I had a irrational idea in my head of, cowboys trying to lasso fish. I had no background with which to even comprehend what was being suggested. And it was only by digging in. And I remember a series of phone calls that I started calling the operators of aqua farms to see if this could be a real thing.
Interesting.
And,
So you're just a steward of curiosity at this point. And when you find you're curious about something, you dive in with literally, you jump in with both feet.
Absolutely. I guess when I believe it's something the world needs, that I did understand, the need for sustainable seafood supplies, the need for economic development. I'd witnessed a lot of those challenges firsthand. I've been doing business internationally and in the Middle East for a while, and so I was very
Uh-huh.
sensitized to the end causes. What I didn't have was awareness of the industry, and so yeah, I started by reaching out to some folks that could provide that perspective.
Got it. Got it. So now you're looking at it, you're building this framework, and this becomes ultimately Forever Ocean.
Absolutely. And as I'm, taking in the feedback, I was really through the lens of a technologist, through a conservationist, humanitarian, and at the root of it, really I just wanted to find a way to feed the planet without destroying it in the process. That we need a lot of food, and that's a big challenge. And I think especially during the pandemic, that's become real in a lot of societies where it was previously a problem in other regions, and now I
Mhm.
think there's a real heightened sensitivity. But that is the fundamental problem that I was setting out to solve.
Incredible, and enough motivation that it made you pivot what you were doing. So, and I love that this lens comes from the outside, because I've always been a big believer that it's that way you don't have the weight of the industry telling you what you can and can't do. You can really like color outside the lines. So what does your definition of sustainable aquaculture look like?
That's a really good question, because I feel like that's one of the most overloaded terms that we use in industry. And I guess I try to take a very simple and pragmatic definition that to me, sustainable means you can do something in perpetuity. You can keep doing it, and you're not damaging or destroying the underlying and supporting conditions. Now that said, a lot of times we focus in on environmental sustainability, and certainly that's really important. But when I say conditions, we look at it as not just the environmental, but it's also the economic, it's also the social. It really is all of the enablers. And I would say that's the perspective we've adopted at Forever Oceans, that we need to look comprehensively when we're trying to solve a problem as global and complicated as this. You really have to be aware of all those aspects.
And that's fair. I mean, that I have came to this always in explaining what sustainability means by that UN definition, which was essentially that what we're doing now is not robbing future generations of the opportunity to be able to utilize that resource. So makes perfect sense to me. And we obviously know that aquaculture has played this role, right? The commercialization, the commoditization of aquaculture has played a role that is, to a certain extent, far from regenerative, and that leading the way in what these solutions are is extremely important. So I'm curious about, as you're looking at what Forever Oceans is, and for those that don't know you, so you've got this definition of sustainable aquaculture, you've got your suitcase packed with all of these things that you are going to pivot this career from Lockheed with as you're going into building what this is. What is the vision of Forever Oceans, and what is it? What are you doing now?
Yeah, we really want to provide nutritious and delicious food globally. And so at the core, really we're trying to bring a system integration approach to delivering a mechanism that effectively converts salt water to high quality protein. And
Mhm.
I know that is a large ambition, but now that you understand some of the background of where we came from, probably also appreciate, we take a lot of effort in breaking that down and defining, how do we measure it? How do we go about achieving it? But really, when we look at resources significant enough to make a difference in problems this big, you need to look at things like the ocean and how we're managing them in a sustainable way.
So you're there with a framework that is going to stretch, as we've already said, color outside the lines for sustainable aquaculture. But now you have to put this into practice. So explain to everyone what you're doing and where and how, and then we can talk about how you're applying that internally in terms of that vision.
Sure. Well, I mean, we're trying to bring together the best components to achieve this result. And when I say components, that can be a robot, it can be something we invent, it can be something we buy, it can be infrastructure, cages, boats, moorings, it can be the biological components and the integration of processes. It can be consumer awareness. Again, there's many facets of this problem. But I think we're very cognizant that we operate in a highly fragmented industry, and the
Yeah.
more we can bring a holistic framework, not just from assessing sustainability, but actually delivering on the goals of sustainability, it's more effective.
And so farms are based where?
That's part of the beauty of our technology. It allows us to place our technology in deeper water. So like
Huh?
we prefer that farms not be moored in less than 100 meters because we want that separation from the benthic layer for environmental reasons. We want to see stuff out in the open ocean where there's natural flow. It's synergistic with the environment. But the beauty of a scalable modular system like that is really the idea of being able to place it in the vastness of the ocean. That we specifically don't want to be limited to shallow waters, bays, fjords, areas without good water throughput. That those are potentially dangerous areas to operate in from an environmental standpoint, and we just don't foresee it as scalable as delivering on a solution that can leverage the ocean in a sustainable way.
So mariculture, deep ocean, there's been a lot of conversation about this, and you've done a lot of work in Hawaii, correct?
Yeah, so we do have a development facility in Hawaii, and that's great because the bathymetry drops off very quickly. So we've deployed our moorings in up to 2,000 meters of water. That is a very good environment for learning by hard knocks and making sure things work well. So yes, very very proud of our technology team's work there.
hmm and obviously the farm behind you. So the picture that you're showing us is an example of that.
Absolutely, yeah. That's actually a picture looking up from under one of the systems, and yeah, the beauty of it with the modularity, each system is effectively independent, and it allows for much more scalability, but also the introduction of good biosecurity,
Right.
good balance with the environment, really being sensitive to what is harmonious, and then where's the threshold when you start to cause damage, and staying clear of that.
And this is Kampachi behind you.
Yeah, so those are
Okay.
Serial Lower Voliana
Yep.
in the cage behind me, but we do focus on having solutions that are species agnostic. That
Mhm.
amongst pelagic finfish, we try to keep things broadly applicable. That we're starting with some focused solutions, but we want to have a broad enough impact to really raise the bar in the industry.
So let's talk about, I think it's so important. So you're creating systems that really are stretching the envelope and setting the bar higher. So what does that mean? I mean, how does Forever Oceans achieve this internally within your own operations? And obviously, this is relatively small scale, but then how it inspires the others in terms of the sharing of information systems in order to be able to really create a scalable system.
Yeah, absolutely. And really excited to share some of our thinking on this. I also want to be sensitive that in a problem space this large, there's not a single silver bullet to solve the problem.
Not.
There are many good approaches. And first of all, I'd say we want to see a system of innovation brought to bear. But I think some of the key fundamentals for us are really in the environment and the technology and the leadership development. And if we start with the environment, really has to be specific to situating a given production solution in the right conditions. And for us, we want to make sure that it's scalable.
Mhm.
That when we're trying to have a significant and positive effect, making sure that it's something that's not only sustainable at small scale, but sustainable at large scale, and that can
Right.
look different. You have to look at the appropriate density, and not just for a cage, but outside the cage in the environment. And there's sophisticated things coming to the industry like multi-trophic and regenerative approaches, but minimally we want to make sure that technology is being brought to bear to assess the appropriate environmental density and fit, and from that you can start to look at the efficiency of resource use. That we're talking about the oceans as a shared resource, and we want to make sure we're using every technology and every resource to the best of its ability to produce food, whether that's looking at FCR metrics or use of ocean space, or technologies like RAS that we use in hatcheries. And that really allows us to get to a place where you can start to make intelligent trade-offs and investment decisions, and have measures for what it means to raise the bar.
Mhm.
It also allows, in being economically sustainable. Most businesses need to actually make money and to assess what you can justify as an investment and how you can return that. So again, I would say the first piece, really comes from looking at the environment a different way, but
Mhm.
that leads pretty quickly into the technology. And I think, for us, it's very fundamental that it is a system integration approach, that there are many great pieces of equipment and ideas out there, and that's a different space from integrated and holistic solutions. And I think one of the
Mhm.
things that's easy to overlook is the survivability of a system. That when you're talking about something operating tens of miles offshore, it's very punishing conditions, salt water, waves, etc., and making
Right.
sure that things are ruggedized, reliable, but the systems are integration of biology and procedures and infrastructure and robots. And so you have a lot of connection points that require extensive modeling, simulation, testing, and really, as we design our approach, we're continuously looking at how we can work with nature and not against it. That
Mhm.
you can spend a lot of money trying to replicate or fight what is naturally going on, and we've generally found it a lot more successful to embrace and to respect the boundaries that exist in nature already.
So let's
um,
talk about that. So I think one of the interesting things that has happened in aquaculture is feeling like a shoe fits every foot. The same shoe size fits every foot. And so looking at these areas and looking at where potentially, when we look at what NOAA's doing and concession planning and where licensing is going to be allowed, and particularly as we see in this legislation and regulatory framework, right? That every system has to be different. I'm curious. I mean, that is sort of it makes sense, right? But we have seen that systems have been put into areas that did not work, specifically because we've decided that it is that same running shoe that's going to work for every single person. And it really doesn't. Every area, you're saying, every part of the ocean, whether it's through wave technology or the species that's going to thrive there because of water, different components in the water, every single thing is different. So tell me, is it your goal then that you're having the opportunity to create systems in different places to understand that? And what do you want to do with that? Is it something that you're open sourcing so that this information is available to other farms
sure.
or
uh,
potential
I
farms?
think our vision is really to focus on the offshore environment for sake of scalability.
Yeah.
We do also believe in onshore hatcheries and recirculating systems for sake of not drawing down on nature by continuously taking fish out of it. They want a closed life cycle.
Mhm.
But that offshore environment and the grow out is really a key focus for us. And one of the cool things that there's a lot of similarities between all the world's oceans in terms of the properties. Obviously, some unique environmental aspects, but a lot of similarities that we can focus on driving our technologies towards.
Mhm. And so how is that if someone's coming to to Forever Ocean and they are trying to solve one of these problems, how do you engage with them then? What is that process?
Yeah, absolutely. So we do want to encourage innovation. We want to encourage good practices, and I've had the privilege of working with a number of governments around the world, a number of investors, and there are farms that you know we will take a lot of pride in equipping with technologies. There's also groups that I'm happy to offer advice to, just to raise the bar and the industry and everything in between. I think one of the valuable things we've been able to gain is a lot of international perspective, even on permitting that, to your point, not every shoe is the right fit for every environment. And it kind of goes back to assessing that we're focused in a particular one, but there are a lot of the principles that we're implementing that are not specific to the open ocean in terms of like water quality monitoring or biosecurity.
Right.
Really, you're going to deal with that anywhere, and those are more of general practices that can be applicable in almost every environment.
Mm-hmm. And how do you feel like this technology and the way you're looking at it really creates a new lens, one that is of improvement as opposed to some of the other things that others are doing? Because the good news is there are a lot of people trying to get into this on all different levels of the system, right? I mean, we're seeing innovation all around it. And so, what are those distinguishing factors when we talk about setting the bar higher? You've talked about water
Yeah.
management, and I talked about constant water management, because I've thought about that myself, that an issue can happen not within the 7 days that you've been required by law to be water testing, and so having that continual monitoring so that you can get ahead of it just seemed logical to me. What are some of the other things?
Yeah. So I think the general highest level, I would say having more access to information. That there are a lot of experienced aquaculturists that have a lot of background with fish and whatnot, and have built best practices. But there's still things that without technology you just can't see with the naked eye, that you can measure with sensors, dissolved oxygen level, for instance, and look at early or leading indicators. And so it's not just about having more information, but it's about being able to make better decisions with that. At the back end, we also focus a lot on automation. And that's really being able to take those decisions with your better information and then take action based on that.
Mm-hmm.
And when you automate, you're effectively allowing capabilities to extend beyond what human labor can do. It's very hard for humans to work long distances for sure, deep underwater, but robots don't find quite as much. So, that's part of the technology side. I would say it's also a big passion of ours in terms of leadership development and growing the industry in that manner. That for challenges large, it really takes a certain commitment and unrelenting intensity to getting there, and not being willing to compromise on issues like sustainability, and remembering, at the end of the day, we're producing a product that someone's going to be eating, and that really involves a certain trust. And so we're trying to develop multifaceted leaders for the future of the industry. We're also really excited about starting to engage with chefs and culinarians that are at the front end of really being the voice of nutrition and sustainability for dietary consideration standpoint.
Mm-hmm. So we've got some questions in our last 5 minutes. Anthony asks, Cook Aquaculture had this terrible fiasco a few years back in the Pacific Northwest. The offshore farm failed. Obviously, it also introduced, what would be considered a non-native species. He says invasive, but a non-native species. How could you solve this for the deep ocean? What do you think can put those? I think he's probably specifically asking about these safety measures, because as we've seen with the EO, which has now been blocked, and what, hopefully the new SATS Act, this Aqua Act coming, is to create more of these types of deep ocean mariculture projects. And I think he wants to know what things we can do to make sure and ensure that a non-native species is not introduced from a collapse of a farm.
Absolutely. And I can't comment on the specifics of that situation, but
No, of
I'll
course
provide
not.
some general
No, I
guidelines
think
here.
that's
That,
it's the future. He's not asking you to comment on that, but what can we do in the future to ensure that these systems are safer?
yeah, so we only work with native species, and I think obviously that puts things in a safer realm to begin with. But obviously, even if you're working with a native species, you don't want escapes. It's not good for the environment. It's not good for economics. And so when we're looking at system design, I think making sure that systems are designed for the environments they're going to be operating in and ruggedized sufficiently, and beyond that, modeled, tested, reliable, but all that's kind of the starting point. That it's also very important. I alluded to the toughness of the ocean conditions. That the reality is things wear out and things break, and so
Right.
the industry has to raise the bar in terms of continuous monitoring of being able to know when a problem is emerging and fixing it before it becomes a significant event. I think also, take that a step further. One of the principles that we really try to build in is one of redundancy, where sometimes really bad things happen, and you need to be able to fail over to backup systems. That it's just the nature of
Yeah, there
the
will be problems. It's how you're able to react to them that really is the defining characteristic. He also asks, you're as CEO of an aquaculture company, how much technology and idea sharing and reuse exists with other similar groups? So we had talked about, thinking of an open source model on the software so that there is collaboration.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more opportunity for that. More and more technologies are developing, and that's exciting for us. That there's things coming that we can integrate and leverage. There's things we're learning that we can share. And so, having forums to actively participate in, to share knowledge, in the future, potentially having bases of technology to contribute towards, and that whether it's universities or startups could leverage for accelerating things. I think there's more opportunity for that ahead as well.
And I think that what I've seen too is to really get in at the level when the money's coming in, because I don't know about you, but you see these original decks from the farm that are now being passed out as they're trying to fundraise. And it is a little bit shocking to a certain extent how some of these issues haven't been worked through. So to me, there's a great opportunity to collaborate at that point, because we know that we need more ethical, sustainable aquaculture at a higher level than the NGO space, the certification and recommendation space is even expecting. And the money, how we're raising money and what expectations we have can drive that. Hans Henriksen Markey says, thinking about circular aquaculture and aquaculture as ocean remediation or waste treatment, how do you see regulations and public opinion changing on the waste to taste thematic, maybe from a US perspective?
Well, I see a lot of ongoing work and need to get more quantified in our discussions and our permitting and regulation, even understanding the results of operations. I think there's a lot of positive intention out there, and I think to the extent that we're able to better measure cause and effect allows us to make good decisions. That we can be regenerative. We know where the threshold is, that it could become a source of deterioration instead of improvement. And so I think as we continue to get more insight into that, it's going to build more confidence, and we're going to see more of it, because we're all going to be more comfortable with it.
And I agree with you. I mean, there are conversations that are happening behind closed doors that are incredibly innovative around waste management and obviously biofuels, and now well boats that are, I mean, we've already seen it happening where we've got well boats and other things that are inputs on the farm that are being utilized specifically with that. So and that is trickling through every single part of the ecosystem. We are glad you are part of this journey with us. Thank you for joining us today. We obviously need the kind of thinking, the kind of out of the box thinking that you're bringing to it. I know there's a lot to talk about in terms of what you see also as market intersects. I hope, Jason, we get the chance to do that, but our time is up today. So thank you so much for joining me. And everyone who's been tuning in, send in your questions. Jason's happy to answer them. And thank you. Hopefully we'll be able to come together again and talk about the other thoughts that you have. Have a great day, everybody.
Really appreciate it, Jennifer. Thanks for having me.
Take care.